Assalamu alaikum, it's Moon here, and welcome. So recently I have played Little Nightmares 2, and let's just say the shock left me hunting for lore. But I wasn't really interested in any kind of lore. I was only interested in canon information, not hypotheticals or metaphoricals. So, after burying myself in any canon information I can find, I have finally come to a logical conclusion. And no, it is not a time loop. Because let's be real, there is nothing logical about that. And I know that the time loop theory is the most popular theory, but there is nothing in the game, whether it is Little Nightmares 1 or even 2, that has ever shown any form of time manipulation. So it doesn't make sense for it to just suddenly have a time loop, you know? And I know you could say it's just special to the Pal City or the Signal Tower, but even those don't really have any proper indication of a time loop. But you know what the game has shown before? An inheritance loop. As we know from Little Nightmares 1 that there were multiple ladies throughout the mall. And there's a strong indication that 6 was brought to be the 6th lady of the mall. I mean, think about it. If it is a time loop, why is it only child Mono and old man Mono? Why not his other stages of growth? We've seen him grow from a child to a teenager, to a young man, and so on and so forth. But we've never been chased by any of them throughout the game. If it is old Mono existing individually from child Mono within a time loop, then his other stages of growth should exist as well. But they don't. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Those who are familiar with the sound of nightmares. When Noon referred to the meat mass as them, it does not mean this. So don't even bother. I already know. And for those who don't know, there's an official audio series on YouTube called The Sound of Nightmares. In its 3rd chapter, it shows a meat mass that people highly speculated to be Mono. But I'm just gonna continue to refer to it as the meat mass, for complication's sake. But when Noon first sees the meat mass, she says this.
You're the one who's been talking. All those voices. Then, I saw countless film cans around the room and understood. It was so alone. It took to imitating.
This imitating that the meat mass used with Noon throughout the chapter is what the them is. Not to mention, the meat mass used multiple voices throughout the chapter.
A cowboy's voice came over the speaker. A free gift to all little girls 10 and under. Showtime's patrons. Our daily motion picture will begin shortly.
But one of these voices happened to be a woman's voice.
A woman's voice this time. Jujubee's Toys is now closing.
And if you're going to argue that these voices are him, then you're gonna have to explain this. And no, puberty is not it. Don't even bother. I think about everything. I know what's in your head. We're talking about a mature woman's voice, not a scratchy little girl. But for me, it does not need explanation. It's clear that it was put there so people do not think that. And some of you might argue that the thin man has time manipulation abilities, but that's just grasping. Let's be real, you're stretching it. Just because he has the ability, and I will say this with air quoting, to make possibly only Mono specifically slow down when he gets close to him, does not mean he has time manipulation abilities. And some of you might argue him suddenly teleporting is him speeding up time. Does not even work because the lady was teleporting all over the place. How come nobody said she was manipulating time? There is no evidence whatsoever of him having time manipulation ability. People are just pushing it. So, what is the timeline actually? I'll tell you what the timeline is. And I know what you're screaming. It has already been confirmed. I know. Relax. I know all about the tweets, but it'll all make sense. So just listen. So, Mono gets brought into the Pal City as the next candidate for the Thin Man, much like how Six was brought into the Mall as the next candidate for the Lady, most likely by the Ferryman as indicated by the comics, and further supported by the Sound of Nightmares. But of course, Mono, not wanting to be part of the cycle, he runs off. And whether there's a special marking on the candidate or just mere similarity, he hides his face as indicated by his description on the website. Mono, as the world buckles under the relentless pulse of the signal tower, Mono takes refuge where he can. His thin paper mask offers some respite, helping him forget that the world outside hates him and wants him to fail, but he can't stay hidden forever, wanting him to fail as there to not be a next Thin Man. So he makes his way to the wilderness, and in that forest he meets a little girl. But that little girl gets caught by the hunter. So he follows them, and he makes his way into the shed and into the basement, finding the little girl and freeing her. But the girl is distrusting, so she runs off and leaves him. But in order for her to escape the hunter, she's forced to work with the boy. And so they work together and manage to kill the hunter. And they continue. And throughout their journey, the girl actually starts to trust the boy. Developing some form of bond. But alas, Mono can't resist the signal tower. Not forever. And this time, things are different. This time, he has a little friend that goes along with him. And so they take her away. And I gotta say, I have to give it to 6, I guess, despite the betrayal. We really don't know much about 6. But we do know one thing for sure, is that she is a survivalist, I guess you could say. Even the slightest chance of danger, she would run off without even looking back. Yet this time, look, she pulls him out. She not only tried to reach out for Mono, she tried to call out for him. Did he free him? And seeing this from 6 is special, I guess you could say. I know a lot of people would like to say that 6 did not actually care about Mono, but that's not true. They actually had formed some kind of a bond throughout their journey. So, anyway, they take that little friend, and now he has no choice but to make his way into the tower. And so, after defeating the Thin Man, he brings about the cause of his misery. And he searches for his friend, following the sound of her music, only to find her in a monstrous form, living in some kind of illusion, hiding her precious music box as she backs away, once again distrustful. But she seems to recognize his voice as he calls out to her. And she lets go of her precious music box, allowing him to come near it, trusting him. But in order for him to save her, he has to break her from this illusion. And the precious box seems to be the source of it. So he attacks it. And everything goes down to hell. And now we're being chased by our precious friend, relentlessly trying to kill us. And now our calls are nothing but a source of pain and rage for her, as she clearly doesn't want to be awakened from this illusion that she's having. But once we successfully destroy the box, our friend returns back to her normal size. And twists her head like we had personally insulted her. Seriously, how the heck did I not see that when I played the game? I don't know. The sheer body language difference. You can practically feel the death glare through the screen, honestly. Anyway, so the tower closes on them and they run. And when they reach the end, she turns back to grab him. Because although she is pissed, it's not enough of a reason to let him die. But this time, something is different. This time, he doesn't have his paper mask. And she can see him for what he truly is. So she twists her head and thinks, if she pulls him now, what would even happen? He can't even resist the tower signal, and despite the numerous times she tried to pull him away from it, he's always going back to it. And now, with the Thin Man defeated, he has already taken over. And you might think, oh, she's with the big boss now. It would be alright. Let's be real. We all know there's a higher power at play. They would never let them leave. They would never let him leave. So, with her trust broken, and him becoming nothing more than a liability, she lets him go to his already doomed fate, and she turns her back, exiting the tower. Mono being abandoned by who he fought so dearly for, gives in to the tower signal. Becoming the next Thin Man and fulfilling the cycle. When asked about the theme of the game, the developer said it was escapism. And what was Mono's escapism? Revenge, perhaps? A second chance? A second chance for things to play out differently with her. But alas, what has happened has already happened, and there is no turning back time. So he repeats the memory over and over again, in hopes of a different ending, in hopes of a better ending. Because at the end of this, Mono, much like everyone else in the Pearl City, is but another victim for the tower's illusion. And that is Mono's little nightmare. If it weren't for his hope of a different ending with 6, his escapism would not have been what it was, causing him, and only him, to be stuck in a constant repeat. Okay, now, what I have told you is the actual event that happened. But what we have seen in the game was the memory, the illusion, the fantasy, the escapism, whatever you might want to call it. Except time loop, of course. This is what we've seen. What is the proof? Well, I'll tell you what the proof is. 1. When asked whether the game is a sequel or a prequel, the developer said it was a sequel, but what we have seen in the game indicated being a prequel, not a sequel, and that they refused to elaborate on whether the fact it is a sequel or a prequel. But with this theory, it actually can be a sequel and a prequel at the same time. But that cannot be the case within the premise of a time loop. Why? Well, that leads us to our second point. Mono already had the Thin Man's power, and we know from Little Nightmares 1 that 6 got the power only after defeating the lady. And if it was a time loop, then Mono should have reset it without that power, but he didn't. And it just does not make sense for him to have that power before defeating the Thin Man. Though that leaves the question, how did Mono actually defeat the Thin Man in the first place? And speaking of defeating the Thin Man, leading us to our third point, when asked whether the Thin Man was the predecessor of Mono, or if they're the same individual, he simply stated, it's all of that. But it can't be both of that within a time loop. It's either one or the other. He's either defeating himself, or he's either defeating the original Thin Man. But with this theory, he can most definitely be both. And our fourth point, when fighting the Thin Man, when he first spawns, he spawns as though he's holding his side, much like Mono is, except if it was mirrored or on a screen. And you might think that this is proof of the time loop theory, but it's not. The fact that this is Mono is proof that it's not a time loop, because if it is a time loop, then it should reset to the original Thin Man, not Mono, much like how he can't reset with his power. It's obvious that Mono just views himself as the villain in his own illusion, because he already knows he has turned into that monster. I know a lot of people think that what Mono wants is revenge, but that's not true. He only wants someone. He just doesn't want to be alone.
What could I do? I ran down the stairs out of the theatre. On the promenade, the lights were flashing so as to be dizzying. The PA screeched, "Everyone needs someone. Don't leave me alone." The walls began to cry that dark, thick liquid. Pulling around me, I looked up. From the floor above, The candleman's dead, pointing at my chest, at the pendant. I flung it down into the liquid, then he reached a hand toward me and all faded as the PA sobbed. Don't take her. Not this one, too.
And I know what you're thinking. How can he be in an illusion while moving as the Thin Man at the same time? Well, Six was attacking us just fine in her own illusion. And just like what the developers said, when asked about the monster's nature, when they turn into these monsters, they are reduced into nothing but instincts. Their mind is not even there to begin with. I honestly think Mono can be saved, because just like how when he broke the source of Six's illusion, she reverted back to herself, then he would also revert back to himself when you break whatever's the source of his escapism, as they call it. Would that thing that we have to break, or I guess kill, would be Six, considering the fact that she is the cause of his escapism? It's an interesting thought, honestly. But would that save him from the signal tower? Would that save him from whatever higher power is at play? I.e. the eye, you know? I don't know. Anyway, that would conclude my analysis for Little Nightmares 2. With nothing but canon information. No hypotheticals, no metaphoricals, just connecting the dots and the pieces. I did not add anything from myself. And this is what I wanted. I did not want it to be my take on it, okay? I just want it to be what it was, as is, you know? So, tell me, do you agree with my analysis? Do you agree with this inheritance loop? Do you agree with this memory, illusion, fantasy, escapism, loop theory? I mean, it makes far more sense than a time loop, that's for sure. Or do you not? Do you have any canon information I have missed? I have dug a lot, so I hope at least I have covered everything about specifically Little Nightmares 2 and the time loop theory. Of course, I'm not gonna cover every single version of the time loop theory, but I just wanted to take down the foundation of it. Not that it has much foundation to begin with, let us be real. The Twitter statement that Mono is being stuck in a constant repeat and them just posting and going like, that's another day, is practically doing all the lifting, not gonna lie. Well, that will be it for now. So, until then, fi aman Allah and assalamu alaikum. Did you know, at the official Facebook page for Little Nightmares, they posted this image saying, the design principles of the upper Mao are silence, austerity, simplicity, profundity, and hostility towards children in yellow raincoats. Notice how it said children, not child. Not just Six or the girl in the yellow raincoat. No, it's a common phenomenon. And why this hostility towards children in yellow raincoats specifically? Well, because they're here to overtake the big boss, obviously. And of course, they ain't gonna take kindly to that.